I'm Jasmine, 32 years old, and I remember the day my world shifted. It was a crisp autumn morning in Chicago, the kind where the air bites but the sunlight promises warmth. I had just received the promotion I'd worked tirelessly for, a senior marketing manager position at a leading tech firm downtown. This wasn't just a job. It was a testament to years of late nights, innovative campaigns, and a relentless drive to prove my worth in an industry that often felt unwelcoming to someone like me. My parents, who had moved to the city from the South with nothing but hope, had always instilled in me the belief that hard work would break any barrier. I walked into the office that day feeling a surge of pride, ready to embrace new challenges and contribute even more to the company I had grown to respect. My colleagues offered congratulations, and for a fleeting moment, I felt truly seen, truly valued. It was a feeling I had chased since I first stepped foot into the corporate world, a space often dominated by faces that didn't reflect my own. I envisioned a future where my success would pave the way for others, a future where merit truly triumphed over prejudice. The first sign of trouble came subtly, a quiet whisper in the bustling open-plan office. A meeting with my new department head, Mr. Harrison, was scheduled for that afternoon. I expected a discussion about my new responsibilities, perhaps a strategic overview of upcoming projects, but what I received was a chilling introduction to a different kind of corporate reality. His demeanor was polite, almost overly so, but his words carried an unsettling weight. He began by commending my performance, praising my dedication, and the results I had consistently delivered. He spoke of my potential and how the company valued diversity in thought, phrases that felt hollow even as they were uttered. I listened intently, a slight smile on my face, eager for the next step in my career journey. It was a moment I had anticipated for months, a culmination of sacrifices and relentless effort. Then came the pivot, delivered with a practiced ease that suggested it wasn't his first time having such a conversation. "Jasmine," he said, leaning forward slightly, "with this new role comes increased scrutiny and, frankly, a need for absolute policy compliance." My brow furrowed slightly. Compliance had always been a given. I had always prided myself on adhering to every guideline, every protocol, ensuring my work was not only excellent but also unimpeachable. He continued, explaining that due to recent internal audits and a restructuring of operational efficiency, my working hours would need to be adjusted. Specifically, my weekly hours would be cut by 20%, effective immediately. The explanation felt flimsy, almost rehearsed, and a knot began to form in my stomach. How could a promotion, which inherently demanded more responsibility, lead to fewer hours? It defied all logic. I tried to interject, to ask for clarification, to understand the rationale behind this seemingly contradictory decision. "But Mr. Harrison," I began, "my new role will require more time, not less. How can I meet the increased demands with reduced hours?" He held up a hand, a polite but firm gesture that cut me off mid-sentence. His eyes, though, held a distant, almost cold quality. He reiterated that this was a company-wide initiative to ensure fairness and equal opportunity across all departments. The words fairness and equal opportunity felt like a cruel irony given the immediate impact on my new position. It felt like a subtle, yet undeniable, attempt to undermine my promotion before I even had a chance to fully step into it. The air in the room suddenly felt heavy, suffocating. I left that meeting feeling bewildered, a sense of unease settling deep within me. The initial joy of my promotion had evaporated, replaced by a growing suspicion. It wasn't just about the hours, it was about the message it sent. It felt like a deliberate attempt to limit my influence, to cap my potential, to subtly push me back into a box they thought I belonged in. The corporate ladder suddenly seemed to have invisible rungs. Over the next few days, the impact of the reduced hours became painfully clear. Projects that once flowed smoothly now felt rushed and incomplete. I found myself working off the clock, trying to compensate for the lost time, but the stress was immense. My colleagues, mostly white, continued their regular hours, their workloads seemingly unaffected by these company-wide initiatives. The disparity was glaring, a stark visual representation of the unspoken truth. I started observing more closely, noticing the subtle ways in which expectations differed. My ideas, once praised, now seemed to require additional justification, more layers of approval. The casual camaraderie I once enjoyed felt strained, as if a silent barrier had been erected between me and some of my peers. It was a chilling realization that the promotion wasn't a gateway, but rather a new, more sophisticated form of limitation. The policy compliance excuse became a recurring theme, a convenient blanket statement used to justify any perceived shortfall in my performance. If a deadline was tight, it was because I wasn't optimizing my reduced hours. If a project needed extra attention, it was my responsibility to ensure compliance. The narrative was being subtly twisted, making it seem as though I was the one failing to adapt. I felt a growing sense of isolation, a feeling that I was constantly under a microscope, scrutinized in a way my peers were not. The joy of my work began to wane, replaced by a constant anxiety about meeting impossible expectations within an unfair framework. It was a battle I was fighting alone, against an invisible enemy that used corporate jargon as its weapon. The realization slowly dawned on me: this wasn't about policy compliance at all. It was about something far more insidious, something deeply rooted in the very fabric of the company's culture. It was about race, about the discomfort my presence in a position of power caused for some, about a systemic bias that sought to maintain the status quo. My promotion had inadvertently triggered a subtle, yet powerful, pushback. I knew then that I couldn't just accept this. My parents hadn't fought for me to shrink myself, to quietly endure injustice. This wasn't just about my career anymore. It was about standing up for what was right, for myself, and for anyone else who might face similar, unspoken barriers. The fight ahead would be daunting, but the alternative was to surrender my dignity, and that was a price I was unwilling to pay. The initial shock of the reduced hours slowly morphed into a simmering resentment, fueled by the growing awareness of a pattern. It wasn't just me. Other colleagues of color, particularly those who had recently achieved promotions or significant milestones, seemed to be experiencing similar policy adjustments or increased scrutiny. The whispers in the hallways, once dismissed as office gossip, now held a chilling significance, confirming my deepest fears. I started keeping a meticulous log, noting every instance where policy compliance was cited in relation to my work or that of my minority colleagues. Dates, times, specific comments, and the names of those involved were all recorded. It felt like I was building a secret dossier, a quiet rebellion against the subtle erosion of my professional standing. This documentation became my silent companion, a tangible record of the intangible bias. My attempts to seek clarification from HR were met with polite but evasive responses. Each conversation followed a similar script: assurances of the company's commitment to diversity, vague references to internal protocols, and a firm insistence that my situation was not unique. They spoke in platitudes, their words designed to soothe rather than to inform, leaving me with more questions than answers. It was a masterclass in corporate deflection. The isolation deepened as I realized that openly discussing my concerns with most colleagues was risky. The fear of being labeled a troublemaker or difficult was palpable, a common tactic used to silence those who dared to question the established order. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, constantly weighing my words, trying to navigate a minefield of unspoken rules and expectations. Trust became a precious commodity. I began to notice how my contributions in meetings were sometimes overlooked or reattributed to others, often male and white colleagues. Ideas I had meticulously developed would be presented by someone else, gaining traction only when voiced by a different mouth. It was a subtle form of erasure, designed to diminish my impact and reinforce the narrative that my success was somehow less significant or less original. The pressure to perform under these new, restrictive conditions was immense. Every task felt like an audition, every deadline a high-stakes test. I found myself working longer hours at home, sacrificing personal time to ensure my output remained impeccable, all while being officially underworked by company policy. The irony was bitter, a constant reminder of the unfairness I was battling. My mentor, Sarah, a seasoned professional who had navigated the corporate landscape for decades, noticed the change in me. She was one of the few people I felt I could confide in, a quiet ally who understood the nuances of corporate politics. Her gaze was knowing, her questions gentle but probing, and her advice always grounded in a deep understanding of systemic challenges. "Jasmine," she said one afternoon, her voice low, "are you feeling supported in your new role?" Her question was simple, but it opened the floodgates. I shared my frustrations, the reduced hours, the vague explanations, the feeling of being targeted. She listened patiently, her expression growing more serious with each detail I recounted. Her silence was more validating than any words could have been. Sarah revealed that she had observed similar patterns throughout her career, particularly with talented minority professionals. She spoke of glass ceilings and sticky floors, metaphors that perfectly capture the invisible barriers I was encountering. Her experience provided a crucial external validation, confirming that my perceptions were not just paranoia but rather a reflection of a deeply ingrained reality. She advised me to continue documenting everything, but also to start building a network of support outside the immediate work environment. "These battles are rarely won alone, Jasmine," she cautioned. "You need people who believe in you, who can see what's happening, and who are willing to stand with you, even if from a distance." Her words were a lifeline, a beacon in the growing darkness. I started reaching out to former colleagues, industry contacts, and even some acquaintances from professional diversity groups. I spoke generally about challenges in my new role, carefully gauging their reactions, looking for signs of understanding or shared experiences. It was a delicate dance, trying to find allies without revealing too much too soon. One conversation, in particular, stood out. A former colleague, David, who had left the company a few months prior, expressed his own frustrations with what he called the invisible wall. He recounted instances where his projects were suddenly defunded or his team members reassigned after he had achieved significant success. His story mirrored mine, adding another layer of confirmation to the systemic nature of the problem. The realization that this wasn't just a personal slight, but a broader institutional issue was both disheartening and empowering. Disheartening because it meant the problem was deeply entrenched, but empowering because it meant I wasn't alone. There was a collective experience of being undermined, a shared struggle that transcended individual incidents. My determination solidified. This wasn't just about my hours or my career. It was about challenging a system that subtly, yet effectively, suppressed talent based on something as arbitrary as skin color. The policy compliance was a smokescreen, a convenient excuse to maintain a hierarchy that benefited some while disadvantaging others. I was no longer just an employee. I was a witness and a potential catalyst for change. The whispers in the office, once a source of anxiety, now became a call to action. I understood that my fight, if successful, could potentially benefit countless others who had silently endured similar injustices. The path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but the conviction that I was fighting for something bigger than myself gave me the courage to take the next crucial step. The time for quiet observation was over. It was time to seek justice. The decision to pursue legal action was not made lightly. It was a terrifying prospect, filled with uncertainties and the very real risk of professional ostracization. But the alternative, to silently endure the injustice and watch my career slowly erode, felt even more unbearable. My dignity, my hard work, and my future were on the line, and I knew I had to fight for them. This wasn't just about me, it was about setting a precedent. I spent weeks researching employment lawyers in Chicago, looking for someone with a strong track record in discrimination cases, particularly those involving subtle systemic bias. I needed an attorney who understood the nuances of corporate power dynamics and who wasn't afraid to challenge large, established firms. It was a daunting task, sifting through countless profiles and testimonials, searching for that one perfect fit. My first consultation was with a highly recommended attorney named Ms. Evelyn Reed. Her office was modest, but exuded an aura of quiet competence. She listened patiently as I recounted my story, presenting my meticulously kept log of incidents, emails, and observations. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes conveyed a deep understanding, a recognition of the familiar patterns I described. I laid out the details, the sudden reduction in hours post-promotion, the vague policy compliance explanations, the disproportionate impact on minority colleagues, and the subtle ways my contributions were being marginalized. I showed her the performance reviews that contradicted the notion of any professional shortcomings, highlighting my consistent excellence. Every piece of evidence was presented with a nervous but firm resolve. Ms. Reed asked probing questions, digging into the specifics of company policies, the history of promotions, and the demographic breakdown of leadership. She was thorough, methodical, and her questions made me realize just how deeply ingrained these discriminatory practices could be, often hidden beneath layers of corporate jargon and seemingly neutral rules. Her legal mind was sharp, cutting through the corporate facade. She explained the complexities of proving subtle discrimination, emphasizing that it often wasn't about overt racist remarks, but rather about disparate impact and a pattern of behavior. "They won't say we're cutting your hours because you're black, Jasmine," she explained, "but if the effect of their policy compliance disproportionately impacts black employees, that can be discrimination." Her words provided a crucial framework. The financial implications of a lawsuit were daunting. Ms. Reed outlined the potential costs, the time commitment, and the emotional toll it could take. She was honest about the uphill battle, the resources a large corporation could deploy to defend itself. Her transparency, while sobering, also built my trust. She wasn't sugarcoating the challenge ahead. Despite the challenges, a sense of quiet determination settled within me. Ms. Reed believed I had a strong case, not just based on my individual experience, but on the emerging pattern she recognized. Her confidence was contagious, giving me the courage to move forward. This wasn't just about winning, it was about exposing a truth that the company desperately wanted to keep hidden. I walked out of her office feeling a mixture of fear and empowerment. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months, I felt like I had an advocate, someone who understood the invisible fight I was waging. The burden of carrying the secret alone began to lift, replaced by the resolve to seek justice, not just for myself, but for the principle of fairness. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of gathering more documents, reviewing contracts, and recalling every detail of my time at the company. My personal life took a back seat as my focus narrowed to building an unassailable case. It was exhausting, but each piece of evidence I uncovered, each pattern I confirmed, strengthened my resolve. The truth, I believed, would ultimately prevail. Ms. Reed advised me to continue working as normally as possible, to avoid any actions that could be construed as insubordination or a breach of my employment contract. It was a difficult balancing act, maintaining a professional facade while secretly preparing to challenge the very institution I worked for. The tension was constant, a low hum beneath the surface of my daily interactions. I confided in Sarah, my mentor, about my decision to pursue legal action. She was supportive, offering not just emotional encouragement, but also practical advice on navigating the internal political landscape. Her wisdom was invaluable, helping me anticipate potential retaliations and strategize my responses. Her belief in me was a constant source of strength. The idea of confronting such a powerful entity was intimidating, but the thought of letting them get away with it was even more so. This wasn't just about my lost income or stalled career. It was about the fundamental right to equal opportunity, free from the insidious grip of prejudice. My resolve hardened with each passing day. I knew the company would fight back, likely attempting to discredit me or downplay the severity of their actions. They would try to frame it as a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation of policy, anything to avoid confronting the uncomfortable truth of their discriminatory practices. I braced myself for the battle ahead, knowing it wouldn't be easy. But I also knew that I had the truth on my side, and with Ms. Reed's expertise, I felt a quiet confidence growing within me. This lawsuit wasn't just a legal battle, it was a statement, a refusal to be silenced, a demand for accountability. The search for justice had begun, and I was ready to see it through no matter the cost. The moment the lawsuit was filed, the atmosphere at work shifted dramatically. The subtle whispers turned into an undeniable chill. My colleagues, once friendly, now averted their eyes or offered curt greetings. The isolation I had felt before was nothing compared to the palpable ostracization that now enveloped me. It was clear the company was sending a message, not just to me, but to anyone else who might consider challenging them. The company's initial response was exactly what Ms. Reed had predicted, a swift and aggressive counterattack designed to intimidate and discredit me. Their legal team, a formidable force from a top-tier firm, issued a public statement dismissing my claims as baseless and without merit, asserting their unwavering commitment to diversity and inclusion. The hypocrisy was infuriating, but I remained calm. Internally, The narrative they spun was even more insidious. Rumors began circulating that I was a disgruntled employee, that my performance had been declining, and that the reduced hours were a direct consequence of my inability to adapt to new responsibilities. They attempted to paint me as the problem, twisting facts to fit their convenient narrative, trying to undermine my credibility within the company. My direct manager, who had previously been supportive, now became distant and formal, communicating almost exclusively through email. His once encouraging feedback was replaced by vague criticisms and demands for more detailed reports on even the simplest tasks. It was a clear attempt to build a paper trail of my supposed inadequacies, a tactic designed to weaken my case. The pressure mounted daily. Every email, every meeting, every interaction felt like a potential trap. I knew I had to remain professional, to not give them any legitimate reason to terminate my employment. It was an exhausting mental game, constantly monitoring my words and actions, ensuring I presented an unassailable front. My resolve was tested with every passing hour. Ms. Reed, however, was a rock. She anticipated their every move, guiding me through the legal labyrinth with unwavering confidence. She reminded me that their aggressive tactics were a sign of their desperation, an indication that my lawsuit had indeed struck a nerve. They wouldn't fight this hard if they weren't worried, Jasmine, she assured me. Her words were a balm to my frayed nerves. We began the discovery process, a phase where both sides exchanged evidence. Their legal team produced mountains of documents, many irrelevant, clearly designed to overwhelm us. But Ms. Reed was meticulous, sifting through the noise to find the critical pieces of information that would expose their discriminatory practices. Her dedication was inspiring, a testament to her commitment to justice. One particular tactic they employed was to schedule my deposition, a formal sworn testimony, during a critical period for my work projects. It was a deliberate attempt to disrupt my professional life and add to my stress. But I prepared diligently with Ms. Reed, rehearsing answers, anticipating difficult questions, and ensuring my testimony was clear, concise, and truthful. During the deposition, their lawyers were relentless, trying to poke holes in my story, to make me contradict myself, to portray me as emotional or irrational. They grilled me for hours, revisiting the same questions from different angles, attempting to wear me down. But I held my ground, remembering Ms. Reed's advice to stick to the facts and maintain my composure. The experience was draining, but also strangely empowering. Facing their aggressive questioning head-on, refusing to break, solidified my resolve. I realized that their power lay in intimidation, and by standing firm, I was chipping away at their control. This was not just a legal battle, it was a test of my resilience, and I was determined not to fail. We also started to uncover more concrete evidence of their discriminatory patterns. Through public records and careful analysis, Ms. Reed found data showing a clear disparity in promotion rates and hour adjustments for minority employees compared to their white counterparts. The policy compliance excuse was beginning to unravel, exposed as a thinly veiled cover for systemic bias. The company's counterattack, while designed to crush me, was inadvertently strengthening my case. Their overzealous defense and transparent attempts to discredit me only highlighted the validity of my claims. Each aggressive move they made provided more ammunition for our argument, revealing the extent of their desperation to suppress the truth. My support system outside of work became crucial during this period. Sarah continued to offer quiet encouragement, and my family, though worried, stood firmly behind me. Their belief in my integrity and the justice of my cause was a constant source of strength, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. Their love was a shield against the company's attacks. I knew the battle would be long and arduous, but I was no longer afraid. The company's attempts to silence me had only amplified my voice, solidifying my conviction that what I was doing was right. The counterattack had failed to break me. Instead, it had only fueled my determination to see justice served, no matter how difficult the path. As the discovery phase progressed, Ms. Reed's meticulous work began to yield significant results, slowly but surely pulling back the curtain on the company's discriminatory practices. We unearthed internal communications that, while carefully worded, hinted at a deliberate strategy to manage diversity optics rather than genuinely foster inclusion. The layers of corporate speak were peeling away, revealing a much darker truth beneath. One particularly damning piece of evidence was an internal memo discussing resource optimization in departments with high-growth talent. While seemingly innocuous, Ms. Reed demonstrated how these optimizations disproportionately targeted employees of color who had recently been promoted, effectively limiting their capacity to excel. It was a subtle, yet undeniable, form of sabotage disguised as efficiency. We also obtained anonymized data on employee turnover rates, which showed a significantly higher attrition among minority employees in management positions, especially those who had received promotions. This wasn't just a coincidence, it was a pattern, a clear indicator that something was fundamentally wrong with the company's internal environment. The numbers didn't lie, even if the company tried to. Ms. Reed used this evidence to file a motion for sanctions against the company, alleging that they had intentionally withheld crucial documents and engaged in dilatory tactics during discovery. The judge, known for her no-nonsense approach, took our allegations seriously, putting the company's legal team on the defensive for the first time. The tide was slowly turning in our favor. The pressure on the company intensified. News of the lawsuit began to leak to industry publications, albeit in a generalized form, raising questions about the company's internal culture. While my name wasn't mentioned, the whispers about a discrimination lawsuit against a prominent tech firm were enough to cause a stir, impacting their public image and investor confidence. During this period, I received an anonymous email from a former employee detailing similar experiences of subtle discrimination and eventual forced resignation. The email provided additional names and dates, corroborating many of my own observations and strengthening the pattern of behavior we were building. It was a brave act of solidarity, and it gave me renewed hope. Ms. Reed carefully vetted the information, ensuring its credibility, and then used it to bolster our case, demonstrating that my experience was not an isolated incident but part of a broader systemic issue. The company's narrative of my individual performance issues was becoming increasingly untenable in the face of mounting evidence. They were running out of excuses. The company's legal team, realizing the gravity of the situation, began to shift their strategy from aggressive denial to damage control. They proposed a mediation session, a sign that they were feeling the pressure and were perhaps willing to explore a settlement rather than risk a full public trial. It was a small victory, but a significant one, confirming our progress. During the mediation, their representatives continued to downplay the severity of their actions, offering a modest settlement that was far below what Ms. Reed believed my case was worth. They still tried to frame it as a misunderstanding or an unfortunate miscommunication, avoiding any admission of wrongdoing. Their arrogance was still palpable, but their confidence was visibly shaken. I sat across the table, maintaining my composure, listening to their carefully crafted apologies and their attempts to minimize my suffering. It was difficult, but I reminded myself that this wasn't about their feelings, it was about justice. My resolve remained firm, anchored by the truth of my experience and the overwhelming evidence we had compiled. Ms. Reed expertly countered their arguments, presenting our evidence with precision and force, highlighting the systemic nature of the discrimination and the severe impact it had on my career and well-being. She made it clear that we were prepared to go to trial, to expose their practices in open court if a fair and just settlement couldn't be reached. The mediator, a neutral third party, began to lean in our favor, recognizing the strength of our case and the potential reputational damage the company faced. The atmosphere in the room grew tense as the reality of their situation began to sink in for the company's representatives. Their dismissive smiles slowly faded, replaced by genuine concern. The unveiling of truth was a slow, arduous process, but it was happening. Each piece of evidence, each legal maneuver, chipped away at the company's carefully constructed facade. The systemic nature of the discrimination was becoming undeniable, transforming my personal struggle into a powerful indictment of their corporate culture. I felt a profound sense of purpose during this phase. My fight was no longer just about me. It was about holding powerful institutions accountable, about challenging the subtle forms of prejudice that often go unaddressed. The truth, once hidden, was now emerging, and its light was beginning to shake the very foundations of the company. The mediation session, though inconclusive, marked a significant turning point. The company, now fully aware of the strength of our evidence and the judge's growing skepticism, began to show genuine signs of vulnerability. Their legal team, once dismissive, became noticeably more cautious, their aggressive posturing replaced by a more conciliatory tone. It was a subtle shift, but a powerful one, indicating that our strategy was working. Ms. Reed pressed our advantage, filing additional motions to compel more internal documents and employee data. She argued that the company's previous disclosures were incomplete and deliberately misleading. The judge, increasingly frustrated by the company's evasiveness, granted many of our requests, forcing them to reveal more of their hidden practices. The walls they had built were starting to crumble. The internal pressure on the company intensified as news of the lawsuit and the judge's rulings spread through the ranks. More employees, emboldened by my courage, began to come forward, sharing their own stories of subtle discrimination and unfair treatment. While not all of these could be directly used in my case, they painted a damning picture of a pervasive culture of bias. One former HR manager, who had recently retired, bravely agreed to provide an affidavit detailing how certain policy compliance directives were indeed used to manage the careers of minority employees, particularly those who were seen as too ambitious or not fitting in. Her testimony was a bombshell, a direct confirmation of the systemic nature of the problem from an insider. This affidavit was a game-changer. It provided direct, credible insight into the company's internal mechanisms for subtle discrimination, linking the policy compliance excuse directly to racial bias. It was the missing link, transforming our circumstantial evidence into a powerful, irrefutable narrative of deliberate prejudice. The company's defense was now in serious jeopardy. Faced with this overwhelming new evidence, the company's CEO, Mr. Thompson, who had previously remained aloof, finally agreed to a direct meeting with Ms. Reed and me. It was a tense encounter, held in a neutral conference room, far from the prying eyes of the corporate office. His demeanor was stiff, his face etched with concern, a stark contrast to his earlier public confidence. He began with a carefully worded statement, expressing regret for any misunderstandings and emphasizing the company's commitment to learning and growth. It was still not an admission of guilt, but it was a significant step back from their previous outright denials. He was clearly trying to mitigate the damage, to find a way out of the escalating crisis. Ms. Reed, however, was unyielding. She laid out the full weight of our evidence, including the former HR manager's affidavit, the statistical disparities, and the internal memos. She spoke calmly but firmly, presenting an irrefutable case of systemic discrimination disguised as policy. The silence in the room was deafening as the CEO absorbed the full extent of the allegations. I spoke next, not with anger, but with a quiet strength. I recounted the personal toll the discrimination had taken, the emotional exhaustion, the feeling of being devalued despite my hard work. I emphasized that this wasn't just about my hours or my promotion, it was about the principle of fairness and the integrity of the workplace. My voice was steady, my message clear. Mr. Thompson listened, his gaze shifting between me and Ms. Reed, his initial defensiveness slowly giving way to a look of genuine concern, perhaps even a hint of fear. He realized the depth of the crisis, not just legally, but reputationally. The company's carefully cultivated image was on the verge of shattering, and he knew it. He asked for a private moment with his legal team, and when they returned, his posture had softened. He acknowledged the serious nature of the allegations and expressed a desire to resolve this matter amicably and justly. It was the closest thing to an admission of fault we had received, a clear indication that he was ready to negotiate in earnest. This was the turning point. The company, once impenetrable, was now on the defensive, forced to confront the uncomfortable truth of its practices. My persistence, combined with Ms. Reed's strategic brilliance, had finally broken through their wall of denial. The fight was far from over, but the momentum had decisively shifted in our favor. I felt a surge of quiet triumph. It wasn't about revenge, but about accountability. The truth was finally being heard, and the powerful institution that had tried to silence me was now forced to listen. The path to justice, though still challenging, now felt within reach, illuminated by the light of undeniable evidence. With the turning point reached, the negotiations intensified, becoming a grueling dance between our demand for justice and the company's desire to minimize public exposure and financial penalties. Every clause, every figure was meticulously debated. Ms. Reed was relentless, pushing for not just a fair settlement for me, but also for systemic changes within the company that would prevent similar injustices in the future. The company, desperate to avoid a public trial that would undoubtedly expose their discriminatory practices to a wider audience, became increasingly amenable to our demands. Their legal team, under immense pressure from the CEO, began to concede on key points, acknowledging the strength of our evidence and the risk of a devastating legal defeat. The arrogance that once defined them had vanished, replaced by a palpable urgency. We pushed for a significant financial settlement that would compensate me for lost wages, emotional distress, and the professional damage inflicted. But more importantly, we demanded non-monetary remedies, a comprehensive review of their HR policies, mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all management, and the establishment of an independent oversight committee to handle future discrimination complaints. The negotiations were exhaustive, stretching over several weeks, each session filled with tension and strategic maneuvering. There were moments of frustration, moments when it felt like they were still trying to evade full responsibility, but Ms. Reed never wavered. Her commitment to securing a truly transformative outcome was unwavering, inspiring me to stay strong. During this period, I continued my work at the company, maintaining my professionalism despite the ongoing legal battle. It was a surreal experience, sitting in meetings with the very people I was suing, knowing the truth that was about to be unveiled. My composure, I believe, only added to their discomfort, a silent testament to my unwavering resolve. The company's internal environment was in turmoil. The whispers had turned into open discussions about the lawsuit, and the morale, particularly among minority employees, was at an all-time low. Many felt vindicated by my actions, seeing their own experiences reflected in my fight, while others expressed fear about potential repercussions. My case had become a catalyst for a much-needed conversation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a comprehensive settlement agreement was reached. It was a landmark victory, not just for me, but for the principle of accountability. The financial compensation was substantial, more than I had ever imagined, a clear acknowledgement of the harm I had endured. But it was the non-monetary terms that truly felt like justice. The company agreed to implement a new, independent review process for all promotions and hour adjustments, with a particular focus on ensuring equitable treatment across all demographics. They committed to investing in robust diversity and inclusion programs, led by external experts, and to creating clear, transparent pathways for career advancement for all employees. Furthermore, a public statement was drafted, acknowledging past organizational shortcomings and reaffirming their commitment to fostering a truly inclusive workplace. While it didn't explicitly admit to discrimination, the language was a clear departure from their initial denials, a subtle but significant concession to the truth we had unveiled. It was a victory in itself. The signing of the settlement agreement was a quiet affair, a stark contrast to the public spectacle I had once feared. Sitting across from Mr. Thompson and his legal team, I felt a profound sense of closure, a release from the burden I had carried for so long. The battle was over, and I had emerged not just victorious, but stronger. I looked at Ms. Reed, her face radiating a quiet satisfaction. Her unwavering dedication, her brilliant legal strategy, and her belief in my cause had made this victory possible. She had not only fought for my rights, but had also championed a more just workplace for countless others. Her impact extended far beyond my individual case. The reckoning had arrived, forcing a powerful corporation to confront its biases and commit to meaningful change. It was a testament to the power of perseverance, to the courage of speaking truth to power, and to the unwavering belief that justice, however slow, can prevail. My lawsuit had indeed shaken the company, forcing it to look inward and address its deeply ingrained issues. Walking out of that room, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. The weight of the injustice, the stress of the battle, had finally lifted. My professional journey had taken an unexpected turn, leading me through a crucible of adversity, but I had emerged on the other side, not just whole, but empowered, ready to embrace a future built on integrity and purpose. The aftermath of the settlement brought a profound sense of liberation. The financial compensation provided an unprecedented level of security, but the true victory lay in the systemic changes the company was forced to implement. My lawsuit had sent a clear message, not just within that organization, but across the industry. Discrimination, however subtle, would not be tolerated without consequence. I chose to leave the company shortly after the settlement, not out of bitterness, but because my purpose had shifted. My experience had ignited a new passion within me to advocate for others facing similar injustices. I realized that my voice, once silenced, could now be a powerful tool for change, a beacon of hope for those navigating the complex landscape of workplace discrimination. With newfound financial freedom, I decided to establish a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering professionals of color in corporate environments. Our mission was to provide legal guidance, mentorship, and resources to individuals experiencing subtle discrimination, helping them understand their rights and build strong cases. It was a way to pay forward the support I had received from Ms. Reed and Sarah. My organization quickly gained traction, filling a critical void in the advocacy space. We partnered with employment lawyers, HR consultants, and diversity experts to offer comprehensive support. I shared my story openly, not as a victim, but as a survivor who had turned adversity into a catalyst for positive change. My narrative resonated deeply with countless individuals who had felt unseen and unheard. I started speaking at conferences and workshops, sharing insights on navigating corporate bias, building resilience, and understanding the legal avenues available. My message was clear: your worth is not defined by someone else's inability to see it, and your voice has the power to challenge even the most entrenched systems. It was a message of empowerment rooted in my own hard-won experience. The company, true to its word, began implementing the agreed-upon changes. I heard through former colleagues that the new HR policies were being taken seriously and the diversity training was genuinely impactful. While progress is always a journey, not a destination, my lawsuit had undeniably forced a significant shift in their corporate culture, creating a more equitable environment. My relationship with Ms. Reed evolved into a deep friendship and professional partnership. She became an advisory board member for my nonprofit, lending her legal expertise and unwavering commitment to justice. We continued to collaborate on cases, fighting for fairness and accountability, ensuring that no one else would have to endure what I had faced alone. Sarah, my mentor, also joined my advisory board, providing invaluable insights into corporate dynamics and leadership development. Her wisdom and experience were instrumental in shaping our programs, ensuring they were practical, relevant, and truly empowering for aspiring professionals. Our bond, forged in adversity, became a cornerstone of my new purpose. My personal life also flourished. The emotional weight of the lawsuit had lifted, allowing me to reconnect with friends and family, and to pursue passions that had been sidelined during the intense period of conflict. I felt a profound sense of peace and authenticity, living a life that was truly aligned with my values. I realized that the CEO cutting my hours, initially a devastating blow, had ultimately been a perverse blessing. It had forced me to confront a deeper injustice, to find my voice, and to discover a strength I never knew I possessed. What was meant to diminish me had, in fact, empowered me beyond measure. My journey was a testament to the fact that sometimes the greatest setbacks can become the most powerful springboards for growth and purpose. The fight for justice is never easy, but the rewards, not just for oneself, but for the collective, are immeasurable. It was a path I would never have chosen, but one I was eternally grateful to have walked. The impact of my lawsuit extended beyond the company and even beyond my nonprofit. It served as a powerful reminder that individuals, even when facing formidable institutions, have the power to demand accountability and drive change. My story became a symbol of resilience, a testament to the enduring human spirit in the face of adversity. I often reflect on that crisp autumn morning when my world shifted. What began as a personal slight evolved into a public battle for justice, transforming not only my life, but also contributing to a more equitable future for others. My lawsuit didn't just shake a company, it ignited a movement, proving that one person's courage can indeed change the world. My net worth, both financial and emotional, had grown exponentially, not from the company's initial promotion, but from the fight I waged against their injustice. This new horizon was not just about success, it was about significance, about living a life of purpose, and about ensuring that no one else would have to face the unseen ceiling alone.